Death Valley is a land of extremes, where heat kills without warning and the desert floor swallows men whole. Summer temperatures rise past 120 degrees. Water vanishes before it reaches your lips, and the rocks themselves sear the skin. Prospectors told of wagon wheels bursting apart on the rocks, of men crawling toward phantom pools of water that vanished into mirage. Even soldiers stationed nearby called it cursed ground, a place where heat could melt a man's strength before noon. For centuries, bones have baked under the sun here, the unlucky who crossed a valley that gives no mercy. But the Paiute people said the danger went deeper than heat and thirst. Beneath the sand, they spoke of a hidden kingdom, a realm of spirits and demons, reached only through endless tunnels and a narrow bridge over a bottomless chasm. The dead danced there in endless circles, and any living man who tried to follow risked never returning. For generations, it was only a warning. But in 1947, men of science claimed to find proof of something far stranger. They said they had fallen through the desert floor into a labyrinth of tunnels, where the remains of giants lay sealed in stone chambers. 8 and 9 feet tall, clothed in strange garments with markings carved on the walls older than Egypt itself. If the Paiute spoke of spirits, these explorers found the bodies. And in that moment, Death Valley no longer seemed just a desert of heat and sand, but the graveyard of a race that once ruled it. Giants, sealed away in the most dangerous land on Earth. And like the legend says, none of them came back. I'm Rowan, and this is OTRA Legends. Let's get into it. Who were the giants? Imagine Death Valley, not as the wasteland we see today, but as a green corridor at the edge of an ancient world. Long before the desert claimed it, rivers ran here, herds of mammoth drank at its basins, and mountains gave shelter from storms. Into this land, a people came, taller than any we know, their bodies hardened by ocean voyages and endless migration. The Paiute told of them in fragments. A race that walked with power, their voices carrying farther than the wind. Some said they came across the western seas, fleeing a war in a land now lost. Others believed they were cast out by gods, doomed to wander until they carved a new kingdom underground. Their halls, if the stories are true, were not just tombs. They were sanctuaries, built to keep their bloodline alive when fire and drought swallowed the earth above. Perhaps the Paiute called them spirits, because they were too different to be men. And when Russell and Bovey claimed to see their bodies, 8 and 9 feet tall, clad in garments of a forgotten age, they may have found the last remains of that ancient tribe. A strange people who crossed the seas and left their bones in the deepest, deadliest valley in America. The journey of the giants. They were not born of the desert. Long before the white man came, before even the tribes of the plains, the Paiute spoke of a people who came from across the sea. They were giants, taller than any warrior, their stride twice that of a man. Driven from their homeland by famine or war, they built ships of timber lashed with rope, sails of hide stitched with bone needles. Their vessels were heavy, not graceful, but built to endure storms. And when the winds drove them across the great water, they carried their bloodline to a shore no man had yet claimed. They landed on the western edge of the world, hungry and battered. Their ships rotted quickly in the salt air, leaving them stranded. To survive, they followed the rivers inland, hunting mammoth and camel where they found them, stripping hides to make their strange gray garments, the same kind said to be found on their mummified remains centuries later. But survival was never easy. They were too few, too large, too different. They raided villages for food and took children, and the tribes they met called them monsters, children of demons with red hair. So the tribes went to war. The Paiute told of years of blood, of scouts who tracked the giants by the prints of oversized sandals in the river mud, of mothers warning their children never to wander, because the giants moved fastest when the camp was quiet. These red-haired cannibals stole the weak, devoured the fallen, and grew bold enough to haunt the tribe's hunting grounds. In the end, the Paiute drove the last of them into a cavern. They piled sagebrush and willow at the mouth, called out for the giants to surrender their hunger. When none came, they set the brush alight. Smoke poured inward, flames licked the stone, and the cave became a furnace. Any giant who tried to charge the fire met arrows and stones. When the smoke cleared, the Paiute sealed the entrance and left the dead inside. The land around it became forbidden, not out of reverence, but because some evils sleep light. And so the survivors fled farther, into the one place no one else would follow. Death Valley, the kingdom beneath the sand. Here, the sun punished every misstep. Salt pans tore their feet, water vanished beneath the sand, and winds howled through canyons sharp as knives. Yet for the giants, this cursed land was a shield. No tribe would follow them into the fire country, so they dug. With stone tools and later bronze brought from across the seas, they carved their city beneath the desert floor. Tunnels spiraled down into cool chambers where food could be stored. Springs hidden under rock gave water. The bones of animals, mammoth, camel, even saber-tooth, were preserved as offerings in their ritual halls. Life underground was harsh. Fires burned low to conserve smoke. Children grew up never seeing the sun, learning to hunt by torchlight in the tunnels. Roots and herbs were grown in baskets of soil carried inside. The walls echoed with the ring of hammers shaping stone. To outsiders it would look like a tomb, but to them, it was survival. To the Paiute, this kingdom became the ghost land. They said the giants danced with the dead. Perhaps what they really saw were torch-lit ceremonies, tall shadows moving through the halls of a hidden people. But the desert is patient, and no kingdom lasts forever. Their numbers dwindled, their water dried, their halls collapsed beneath shifting sand. The last of them sealed themselves in catacombs, waiting for gods that never came. And when men in the 20th century claimed to stumble upon their remains, they may have found not a legend, but the tomb of a people who crossed the sea, survived the impossible, and vanished into the sand. The 1947 discovery. In August of 1947, the story came alive again. A man named Howard E. Hill stood before the San Diego Transportation Club and told of two men, Dr. Russell, a retired physician from Cincinnati, and Dr. Bovey, an archaeologist who had stumbled into the caverns while prospecting in 1931. They claimed to find mummified giants, 8 and 9 feet tall, clad in strange gray garments. The walls were carved with markings older than Egypt. In one chamber, they found a ritual hall filled with the bones of mammoth saber-tooth and beasts no two ages should have ever shared. Russell said the tunnel stretched 180 square miles beneath Death Valley and into Nevada. He formed a company to reveal the discovery, but when he tried to return, he could not find the site again. Months later, his car was found abandoned, radiator burst, suitcase still inside. He was never seen again. And like the Paiute legend warned, those who enter never return. The Giants of Lovelock Cave, Nevada, 1911. Just across the border in Nevada, a chapter of that war surfaced again. In 1911, 2 miners digging bat guano in Lovelock Cave found more than 40 skeletons. Some were ordinary, but others measured 7 and 8 feet, and many were described as red-haired. For the Paiute, none of this was surprising. Sarah Winnemucca, a respected Paiute writer and descendant of Chief Winnemucca, had already written about the war with the red-haired cannibals, the Siteka who stole children and ate people, and the day the tribes burned them out of a cave. When excavations were made at Lovelock, layers of soot and burn near the entrance matched the story almost perfectly. Oversized sandals, nearly 15 inches long, turned up among more than 100,000 artifacts, along with fragments of clothing cut too large for ordinary frames. So the pattern holds. In California, mummified giants in desert tunnels. In Nevada, red-haired giants sealed by fire after stealing children and feeding on the living. Both stories live in Paiute memory, both are anchored in the earth, and both are guarded by deserts that erase their own trails. But Lovelock was only one chapter. Across America, the pattern repeats. Farmers, soldiers, and archaeologists have unearthed giant skeletons hundreds of times, ranging in height from 7 to 10 feet. Hundreds of reports, thousands of bones. Alongside them lay weapons and tools no ordinary man could wield. Axe heads weighing 30 pounds, spear tips as long as a forearm, pestles carved from stone too heavy for a single hunter to lift. One of these, found beneath Lovelock itself, was said to belong to the red-haired giants. The tribes remembered them too. From the deserts to the river valleys, stories speak of man-eaters, wanderers with voices like thunder, ogres who stole children and devoured the weak. Where they built, they raised earthen mounds aligned with the sun, the moon, and the stars, monuments as old as Babel. The Bible calls them Nephilim, giants born of fallen ones and women, men of renown who filled the world with violence. Whether they crossed oceans or rose again after the flood, their shadow reaches from Death Valley to the Ohio River country. Cannibals in caves, bones too large for the earth to easily hide, and monuments that tell of sky worship and blood sacrifice. The land remembers, even when history and science do not. Closing thoughts. Death Valley does not give up its dead. It buries them under dunes, seals them in canyons, and burns away their trails beneath the sun. The Paiute warned of a kingdom underground where the dead still dance. Prospectors spoke of glowing tunnels, gold, and mummified giants. Doctors claimed to see halls carved with symbols older than Egypt, filled with bones from beasts of another age. And in Nevada, the story lingers with red-haired cannibals, burned in their cave, remembered in legend, and buried once more in silence. Each time the story surfaces, it is swallowed. Entrances collapse, trails vanish, men disappear. Yet the pattern reaches far beyond Death Valley, from desert caves to the river mounds of Ohio, from red-haired giants to sky-worshipping builders of earthworks. Different lands, the same story. Giants lived here once, and the earth itself became their tomb. Perhaps the Paiute were right. Perhaps there really is a kingdom beneath the sand, guarded by demons, where the living are not meant to walk. Or perhaps Death Valley itself is the demon, patient, merciless, and always hungry. Either way, the secret remains. And like the legend warns, those who enter never return. Thanks for joining me on this journey into buried truths. I'm Rowan. Until next time, happy hunting.